Hey, this is Tim from Practical IELTS, and in this video I'm going to be having a look at some IELTS speaking questions all about mobile phones. So if you enjoy this activity and you want to learn more, you can check out the link in the description and you can find the full vocabulary list related to this video on our website. On a typical day, I might spend 1 or 2 hours on my mobile phone, but sometimes, for example, if I'm traveling, I might have to use it more frequently than that. For me, the biggest problem with cell phone ownership is that you can be contacted by people at any time, and you might have some people who kind of expect you to answer them at any time as well. So you might be enjoying yourself, having some family time late in the evening, and you get a text message or a WhatsApp message, and people might expect you to answer that straight away. So I think sometimes cell phones can take away your personal time. When I'm buying a phone, I don't need lots of fancy features. The main thing for me is I'd like it to be quite small, not too heavy, so I can carry it around everywhere. And the other thing that's very important is to have a good battery life, because if your phone runs out of battery, it's no use at all. And sometimes if you're spending a lot of time out of the house, you might want to have something that's going to make it all the way through the day and not run out of battery. Mobile phones can be quite frustrating when people use them very loudly in a public space. So for example, if I'm on the bus and someone is listening to music without using headphones, or maybe they are using headphones and the headphones are letting music spill out so the rest of the bus can hear, that's very frustrating. For me, phones can be quite useful for shopping, but I would always prefer to shop on my computer because I'd like to kind of find out some information about products, and I would like to see pictures on a large screen and really find out as much information as possible before making a purchase. The mobile app that I use most frequently is Google Maps, and it is an app that will show you a map of where you are, but it has many other features that make it very useful. So for example, you can use it to see lots of businesses that are in your area. So if you're looking for a cafe nearby, maybe it's a hot day and you really want to get an iced coffee, then you can open up your phone and you can see all of the coffee shops nearby. And not only that, it will also show you reviews of those coffee shops. So you're able to find the best coffee shop, the one that you really want to drink at. I also think it's quite useful. Another thing I use it for a lot is for getting around town. So this app, a while ago when it first came out, it wasn't very accurate at helping you get around, but now it's very good, especially when it comes to public transport. So if I want to catch a bus and then I have to connect to another bus, Google Maps will tell me which is the best bus to catch, and it will change that based on what time of day it is, even minute to minute. And sometimes the bus will be delayed and it will let you know about that. So it's really, really helpful for finding your way around, especially in a big city like London. I use this app frequently, mostly because I live in a big city that's quite new to me. And so it's very helpful to be able to find new shops. And it's also helpful to be able to find my way to places, especially when I go into central London, where it's very confusing. There's lots of side streets. Having that kind of detailed information all of the time is incredibly useful to me. The only thing I think that could be improved about this app is it's sometimes not quite as good outside of the city. So if you are in the countryside, sometimes the app doesn't have quite as much accurate information. So in the big city, it's good, but sometimes when I go out to the countryside, it could be more detailed and more accurate. And that is the biggest thing I would improve about this app. In my opinion, I think cell phones should be banned from school, but I can also see a lot of good reasons why children would need them on their way to school. So maybe there are some ways children might be able to hand in their mobile phones at the start of the day and collect them at the end of the day so they can contact their parents on their way home, make plans on the way home. However, I think school is so intense these days that you really need to focus. And children don't necessarily know how to prioritize classes over talking to their friends or all of the exciting things that are on their phone. So just to help them study a little bit better, I think children shouldn't have phones. Personally, I believe that people will often assume this is the case and that young people really love their phones and older people don't and maybe are a bit confused about phones. But in my experience, actually, some older people are very keen on their mobile phones. They're very tech savvy and able to operate a mobile phone very skillfully, use all sorts of apps. And actually, surprisingly, lots of younger people, although they might be called digital natives, they're not really able to use a phone that well. So I think it really depends on the individual, and it's hard to make generalizations based on age like that. The answer to this question perhaps depends a little bit on individual circumstances, but I think maybe when a child turns into a teenager, they might be allowed their first mobile phone. Before this, I think it's just too distracting, and I think especially younger people don't have a lot of self-control, especially when they're like 8, 9, 10, 11. They might not be able to stop checking it. And there's also a lot of websites which you might not want them looking at, and it's hard to keep an eye on how they're using it. So for me, I would wait till children are slightly older, maybe 13, maybe 14, 15 even, just so they can use their phone responsibly and be able to access all of the good stuff that comes with having a mobile phone. I think this is absolutely true, actually. I think that mobile phones, especially if you look at this question globally, have really meant that more people can have access to the internet and all of the information that comes with. It really wasn't that long ago where it was really difficult to look things up. You might have to go to a library to find out about stuff. But now we have Wikipedia, you can take courses online, there's all sorts of wonderful things you can do with this tiny little thing you can carry around in your pocket. So for me, I absolutely believe that mobile phones have been good for society. One of the biggest impacts of cell phones on the office is that people have started to move away from email and towards kind of messenger apps, for example, Slack. So back in the day, you might send a big long email to someone and then you might wait quite a long time to get a response back. But now that it's more common for people to use text messaging and it's more common for people to just have WhatsApp and all these different apps, things like Slack are much more familiar to people. And I think communication can happen much faster. So for me, that is the biggest change that cell phones have had on the office. Phones have absolutely changed over the last 10 years. I think they're far more useful now than they used to be. I can remember 10 years ago, maybe you wouldn't be able to access the internet properly. You might be able to access a worse version of the internet. But nowadays, everything your computer can do, your phone can probably also do. It might be a little bit smaller, it might be a little bit harder to see, so it might not be quite as useful, but it is comparable with a real computer.